Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton was born on Nevis, a British ruled island in the West Indies. His birthday was January 11, 1755. But it is sometimes wrongly listed at 1757 because he later shaved 2 years off his age to make himself seem younger than he actually was. When Alexander was 10, his father abandoned the family. Several days after Alexander's 13th birthday, his mother died. After that time, Alexander was apprenticed to Nicholas Kruger, a merchant on St. Croix, one of the Virgin Islands in the West Indies. In 1771, Kruger had to go to New York. He had such a high opinion of 16-year-old Alexander's ability that he left him in charge of the firm's St. Croix office. Upon his return a few months later, Kruger spoke of making young Hamilton a business partner, but Alexander dreamed of attending the college in America. In the summer of 1772, a hurricane slammed into St. Croix. 17-year-old Alexander Hamilton wrote a letter to a newspaper providing a marvelous description of the giant storm. Good God, what horror and destruction! It seemed as if a total dissolution of nature was taking place. The roaring of the sea and wind, the glare of atmosphere, perpetual lightning, the crash of the falling houses, and the ear-piercing shrieks of the distressed were sufficient to strike astonishment into angels. Realizing that Alexander deserved a good education, his friends and relatives raised money and sent him to American in October of 1772. For a while, he attended the school in Elizabeth, New Jersey, where he was often invited to the home of William Livingston, a much older man who would one day sign the Constitution with him. Hamilton enrolled at New York City's King College, now Columbia University, in the fall of 1773. A period when America was moving toward war with Great Britain. He began to write articles and make speeches siding with the Patriots and opposing British injustice. People were astonished at the young man's brilliance, and his fame as a speaker and writer spread. After the Revolution began, Hamilton joined the Continental Army. He fought heroically in New York, New Jersey, and Virginia, and for much of the war served as George Washington's most important aide. The general depended on Hamilton to help him write letters and assist him in organizing the army. In late 1780, Hamilton married Elizabeth Schuyler of New York. Betsy and Alexander had 8 children. At the end of the war, Hamilton became an attorney, opening a Wall Street law office in New York City. During the 1780s, he also served on the Continental Congress and the New York State Legislature. Hamilton represented New York in the Annapolis Convention in 1786. There, he pushed through a recommendation that a meeting be held in Philadelphia the next May to render the Constitution of the federal government adequate to the needs of the Union. Despite his brilliance, Hamilton had little influence on the Philadelphia Convention. For one thing, New York's other delegates, John Lansing and Robert Yates, opposed the strong federal government and could sing their state's vote against Hamilton. Also, Hamilton had some unpopular ideas, arguing that the president, senators, and Supreme Court justices should hold office for life. Because Lansing and Yates left the convention early, Hamilton was the only New Yorker to sign the Constitution. The Little Lion, as Hamilton was called, waged a relentless campaign for the approval of the Constitution. He wrote the bulk, 51, of the newspaper essays called the Federalist Papers, which urged ratification of the Constitution, with James Madison and John Jay producing the remaining 34, and his efforts at the ratification convention in Poughkeepsie, New York, were instrumental in the state narrowly approving the Constitution on July 26, 1788. Following his election as the nation's first president, George Washington chose his former aide to be the first Secretary of the Treasury. During more than 5 years in his post, Hamilton strengthened the nation's finances and helped organize the banking system. In 1796, he wrote much of the famous farewell address for retiring President George Washington. Hamilton practiced law in New York City in his later years. An outspoken man of strong opinions, the Little Lion made several political enemies. One of them was Aaron Burr, whom Hamilton helped prevent from becoming president in 1800 and governor of New York 4 years later. Burr's hatred of Hamilton became so intense that he challenged him to a pistol duel. Early in the morning of July 11, 1804, the two men met at Weehawken, New Jersey. In their duel, Burr shot Hamilton, who died the next day at age 49. To this day, Alexander Hamilton and Benjamin Franklin are the most famous of the signers of the Constitution who never became president. A portrait of Alexander Hamilton, founding father and first secretary, can be seen on the U.S. $10 bills.